The massive silver ship of the Taeguk appeared in Earth's orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning. It moved without any sound, smooth like silk against the black of space. Commander Do-hyun stood at the front of his ship's bridge, looking down at the blue planet with mild interest. His tall, silver-skinned figure reflected the soft lights from the control panels around him. "Another primitive world," he said to his crew. "Their technology is basic. They still use fossil fuels on much of their planet." He checked the data readings again. "And their bodies produce fear responses. How inefficient." The Taeguk had evolved beyond fear centuries ago. Their bodies no longer made the chemicals that caused fear. They saw this as one of their greatest achievements. It let them explore space without hesitation and face any danger with pure logic. On Earth, Captain Lee Ji-won of the United Earth Defense Force watched the alien ship through the main window of Space Station 1. Her heart beat faster, but her voice remained steady as she spoke to her team. "Remember your training. We've prepared for first contact for years. Let's show them humanity's best." The communications officer at her side looked up from his screen. "Captain, they're requesting permission to send a shuttle to the station." "Granted," Ji-won said. She straightened her blue uniform and touched the silver Earth Defense Force pin on her chest. It was a habit she had when she needed to focus. The Taeguk shuttle was beautiful. It looked like flowing mercury as it moved through space toward the station. When it docked, Ji-won and her team waited at the airlock. The door opened with a soft hiss. Commander Do-hyun walked out first. He was 2 meters tall, with skin that looked like polished silver and eyes that seemed to change color in the light. 4 other Taeguk followed him. They moved with perfect grace, as if gravity didn't affect them the same way it did humans. "Welcome to Earth Station 1, Ji-won said, stepping forward. "I'm Captain Lee Ji-won of the United Earth Defense Force." Do-hyun looked down at her. His expression didn't change, but his eyes shifted to a cool blue color. "I am Commander Do-hyun of the Taeguk Exploration Fleet." He spoke perfect English, though his voice had a musical quality to it. "Your species has developed faster than our records suggested." "Interesting." Ji-won noticed how he said interesting like someone might talk about a mildly surprising weather report. She could feel his dismissal of humans rolling off him in waves, but she kept her diplomatic smile. "We would be happy to show you our recent developments," she said. "Earth has made great progress in space travel and clean energy in the last decade." "Progress is relative, Captain," Do-hyun said. He looked around the station. "Your technology is still—" He paused, searching for a polite word, "developing." One of the human officers behind Ji-won shifted uncomfortably. Ji-won didn't move. She'd dealt with difficult diplomatic situations before. This was just another one, even if it was with beings from another star system. "Then perhaps we can learn from each other," she said. "Every species has something to teach, just as every species has something to learn." Do-hyun's eyes changed to a lighter shade, almost white. Among his people, this meant surprise, though the humans didn't know this yet. He hadn't expected such a response from a primitive species. "Very well," he said. "Show us what you think we might learn from humans." Ji-won smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "With pleasure, Commander. Though I should warn you, humans are full of surprises." As they walked through the station, Do-hyun watched the humans closely. He saw how they showed their emotions openly, how they responded to each other with smiles and nods. How inefficient, he thought again. How primitive to display everything they felt. He didn't realize he was about to learn just how wrong he was about humans, and he certainly didn't know that in a few weeks, these emotional, fear-feeling beings would teach his fearless species the true meaning of bravery. The first contact had begun, and with it, the start of a story that would change both species forever. Lieutenant Kim Hae-newell walked through the space station's main hall with a group of eager human scientists. Her silver skin gleamed under the bright lights as she explained how the Taeguk had changed over thousands of years. "Our ancestors chose to remove fear from our genetic code," she said, her voice musical and clear. They saw how fear held them back from exploring space. It took 500 years, but now no Taeguk feels fear. She paused near a large window that showed Earth floating below. We see it as our greatest achievement. Research Director Park Eun-soo listened carefully, making notes on her tablet. She had spent years studying human emotions, and now she had the chance to study beings who felt no fear at all. But how do you avoid danger without fear to warn you? She asked. Hanul turned to her with eyes that shifted to a deep purple color. We use logic and data. Fear is not needed when you have perfect information processing. She pointed to her head. Our brains calculate risk without emotional interference. In another part of the station, Commander Do-hyun watched a training exercise. Human astronauts practiced emergency procedures, their heart rates rising as they worked through a simulated crisis. He could see their hands shake sometimes, could hear the stress in their voices, yet they completed their tasks well. Fascinating, he said to Captain Jae-won, who stood beside him. They show clear signs of fear response, yet they continue to function. Jae-won smiled slightly. Fear doesn't stop us, Commander. Sometimes it makes us work harder, think faster. Do-hyun's eyes shifted to a confused yellow color. Illogical. Fear is a survival response meant to make creatures run from danger. Why face the danger instead? Before Jae-won could answer, alarms started blaring through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. A voice came over the speakers. Warning. Micrometeoroid breach detected in Section 7. Emergency teams respond immediately. Do-hyun watched in surprise as the humans around him moved quickly but calmly. Their vital signs showed fear. He could see it in his bio readings, but their actions were precise and coordinated. Park Eun-soo rushed to her lab's computer. The breach was close to her research section. She felt afraid, but her fingers moved steadily over the keyboard as she secured her data. Years of training took over, guiding her actions despite her racing heart. The Taeguk observed as human emergency teams sealed the breach. They worked together smoothly, even though their hands shook slightly and sweat showed on their foreheads. Within 20 minutes, they had fixed the problem. Most interesting, Hae-nul said to Park Eun-soo afterward. You were afraid. We could measure your fear responses, but you stayed to protect your research data. Eun-soo nodded. Fear doesn't control us. It's just information, like your logical calculations. We choose what to do with that information. In his private quarters that evening, Do-hyun reviewed the day's events. He had expected to find a primitive species ruled by their emotions. Instead, he had seen something he didn't quite understand yet. The humans felt everything so strongly, yet they didn't let those feelings stop them. He opened his personal log and began to record. Humans are more complex than our initial reports suggested. They experience fear as a physical response, yet they have developed methods to act despite this limitation. Further study is needed to understand how they achieve this. What Do-hyun didn't write in his log was the small doubt beginning to form in his mind. For the first time in his life, he wondered if removing fear had truly been his species' greatest achievement. Perhaps there was something important they had lost along the way. Back in her lab, Park Eun-soo started a new research file. She titled it, Comparative Study, Emotional Response versus Logical Processing in Crisis Situations. She had a feeling this research would reveal something important about both species. She didn't know yet how right she was. The sun burped. That's what the humans called it when the star released a massive solar flare. But this was no ordinary solar event. This was the largest solar storm recorded in human history. Colonel Kang Ta-won stood in the Taeguk Mars Station's control room, watching the data stream across his screens. His silver skin reflected the red emergency lights that filled the room. The numbers told a clear story. Their station's shields would fail in exactly 6 hours and 23 minutes. Send the data to the human station, he ordered. His voice remained steady. Taeguk didn't feel fear after all. They only processed information and made logical decisions. The human Mars base sat 30 kilometers away across the red desert. They received the Tegak's data immediately. Commander Choi Min-jae looked at the readings and felt her heart skip a beat. The storm wasn't just dangerous, it was catastrophic. "Both stations will be hit," she said to her team. "Our shields might hold, but the Tegak station..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The Tegak station had better technology in most ways, but their shields weren't designed for this kind of solar storm. They had never needed such strong protection before. Their logical minds had calculated the odds of such a massive storm as too low to worry about. Back on Earth, Captain Lee Ji-won received the emergency transmission. Commander Do-hyun stood beside her in the control room, his eyes a cold gray as he processed the situation. "The Tegak station will be destroyed," he said simply. "The crew should have enough time to reach their emergency pods and escape into deep space. Some will survive." Ji-won turned to him sharply. "Some? You're not even going to try to save them all." Do-hyun's eyes shifted to a pale blue. "The calculations are clear. A rescue mission would face 97% chance of failure. It would be illogical to risk more lives." "Send me the data," a voice said from the doorway. Engineer Song Jae-hyuk walked in, his tablet already in his hands. He looked tired. He had been working for 16 hours straight, but his eyes were sharp. "I have an idea," Jae-hyuk said as he studied the numbers. "If we modify the shield generators on our rescue ships, we might be able to create a strong enough protective bubble. It would only last for maybe 30 minutes, but that's not enough time," Do-hyun interrupted. "The evacuation would take at least 52 minutes. Your suggestion is illogical." Ji-won watched as Jae-hyuk's hands trembled slightly. The engineer was scared. They all were, but his voice remained steady. "We have to try. There are 400 Tegak in that station." In the Mars station, Colonel Kang Ta-won prepared his crew for evacuation. They moved with perfect efficiency, their faces calm as they packed only the most essential items. They had accepted the logic of their situation. Many would not survive, but that was simply how things were. Then a message came from Earth. The humans were preparing a rescue mission. Tai-won read the message twice, his eyes shifting to white with surprise. "They are being illogical," he said to his second-in-command. "Their chances of success are minimal. The humans are aware of the odds," his officer replied. "They sent them to us in their message. They are coming anyway." For the first time in his long life, Tai-won felt something he couldn't quite understand. It wasn't fear. Tegak couldn't feel fear. But as he watched his crew continue their evacuation preparations, knowing that humans were willing to risk everything to save them, he felt something. The solar storm grew stronger. The clock kept ticking. And in Earth's orbit, a rescue mission prepared to launch, crewed by humans who were very afraid, but absolutely determined. The real test of both species was about to begin. Commander Choi Min-jae stood before her rescue team in the launch bay. 20 volunteers had stepped forward when she asked for help. Now they all wore their spacesuits, ready to board the 3 rescue ships that would fly to Mars. "The mission is simple," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We get there, we save them, we come back. Engineer Song has modified our shields. They will hold for 30 minutes in the solar storm. The Tegak say we need 52 minutes for a full evacuation," one of her crew members said. Min-jae nodded. "Then we'll have to work faster than they think possible." She looked at each crew member in turn. "Anyone who wants to step down, now is the time. No one will think less of you." No one moved. They were all afraid. Their heart monitors showed it clearly, but they stood firm. In the control room, Engineer Song Jae-hyuk worked frantically on final calculations. His fingers moved fast over his keyboard as he made last-minute adjustments to the shield modifications. Commander Do-hyun watched him with changing eye colors, shifting from yellow confusion to white surprise. "Your hands are shaking," Do-hyun said. "Your heart rate is elevated. You show all signs of extreme fear, yet you continue to work." Jae-hyuk didn't look up from his screen. Being afraid doesn't mean you stop working. Sometimes being afraid makes you work harder. He pressed a final button and straightened up. The shield modifications are ready. They're not perfect, but they're the best we can do with the time we have. Captain Lee Ji-won's voice came over the station speakers. Rescue ships, prepare for launch in 10 minutes. Do-hyun turned to her. Captain, this mission has a 97% chance of failure. Your people will most likely die. This is not a logical choice. Ji-won looked at him steadily. With respect, Commander, humans don't always make choices based only on logic. Sometimes we choose based on what's right. In the Mars station, Colonel Kang Ta-won received the message about the incoming rescue mission. He gathered his 400 crew members and told them to prepare for emergency evacuation. The humans believe they can evacuate us all in less than 30 minutes, he said. Our calculations say this is impossible, but they are coming anyway. One of his officers spoke up. Should we not tell them to save themselves? The risk to their lives is unnecessary. I sent that message already, Ta-won replied. They responded with one word. Coming. The rescue ships launched from Earth's orbit. As they accelerated toward Mars, Medical Officer Yoon A-ra monitored the crew's vital signs. Their fear levels were high, but their performance remained steady. She made careful notes about this for Research Director Park Eun-soo's study. Commander Min-ji sat in the lead ship's pilot's seat, her hands firm on the controls. The vast distance between Earth and Mars had never felt longer. They had exactly 4 hours to reach the Taeguk station before the solar storm hit with full force. Engineering, status report, she called. Modified shields are holding, came the response. We're ready. Behind them, the largest solar storm in human history continued to build. Ahead of them lay their impossible mission. And watching it all, the Taeguk were about to learn something new about the species they had dismissed as primitive. They were about to learn that sometimes the most logical choice isn't the right one. And sometimes the most impossible tasks are the ones most worth doing. The 3 human rescue ships approached Mars through the growing solar storm. Inside the lead ship, Medical Officer Yoon A-ra watched her monitors with careful attention. The crew's vital signs told a clear story. Elevated heart rates, increased stress hormones, all signs of intense fear, yet their performance remained steady. Remarkable, Lieutenant Kim Hae-newell said, looking over A-ra's shoulder. The Taeguk officer had insisted on joining the rescue mission to observe human behavior. Their bodies show extreme stress, yet they maintain function. A-ra nodded without taking her eyes off the screens. Humans can feel fear and still act. The two things aren't exclusive. Commander Choi Min-ji's voice came over the communication system. We're entering the storm's edge. All ships, activate modified shields. The solar radiation outside grew stronger. The ship's sensors showed dangerous levels of energy approaching them. Engineer Song Jae-hook watched his shield readings carefully. The modifications were working, but they wouldn't last long. Shields at maximum, he reported. 29 minutes of protection remaining. Through the viewports, they could see the Taeguk station on Mars' surface. Its normal silver color had turned dark red under the storm's light. Colonel Kang Ta-won's voice came through their communications. Human rescue ships, our calculations show you cannot succeed in time. Please retreat to save yourselves. Negative, Colonel. Min-ji responded. Prepare your people for immediate evacuation. We're coming in. The rescue ships landed around the Taeguk station in a triangle formation. Their shields created a protective bubble that covered the evacuation route. As soon as they touched down, the rescue teams moved into action. 27 minutes remaining, Jae-hook called out. The Taeguk watched in surprise as the human rescue teams ran into their station. The humans' hands shook as they helped guide the Taeguk crew members to the ships. Their voices trembled sometimes, but their instructions remained clear and firm. Medical Officer A-ra documented everything. She saw how the humans' fear responses actually helped them move faster, think quicker, find creative solutions to problems as they arose. The Teguk crew, with their logical and measured movements, had to be urged to move more quickly. 15 minutes remaining, J-Hook announced. His voice shook but remained loud and clear. We're at 40% evacuation. Lieutenant Hay Newell helped coordinate between the species. She noticed how the humans' emotional urgency actually helped speed up the evacuation. The Teguk crew began to match their pace, moving faster than their normal calculated efficiency would suggest. 10 minutes remaining, J-Hook called out, 65% evacuated. Commander Minji moved through the station, directing traffic and helping where needed. Her heart pounded with fear, but her mind remained focused on the task. She saw Colonel Ta-1 observing the humans' actions with eyes that kept shifting between white surprise and deep purple confusion. 5 minutes remaining. J-Hook's voice came again. 85% evacuated. Shields starting to fail. The solar storm grew stronger outside. The ship's shields began to flicker. But inside the station, humans and Teguk worked together with increasing speed and coordination. The impossible task began to look possible. And through it all, Medical Officer Ara kept recording. She documented how fear drove the humans to exceed their normal limitations. She noted how the Teguk began to adapt to the humans' urgent pace. Most importantly, she recorded the moment when both species began to truly understand each other. The rescue mission wasn't just about saving lives anymore. It had become a lesson about the true nature of bravery. 3 minutes until shield failure, Engineer Song J-Hook announced. His voice echoed through the Teguk station's corridors. 95% evacuated. Lieutenant Han Woo-jin led the last group of Teguk scientists through the station's winding corridors. The emergency lights cast red shadows on their silver skin. They were almost at the rescue ships when Woo-jin heard a crash behind them. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking the path to the last research lab. Woo-jin's handheld scanner showed 3 Teguk scientists still inside that lab. They were trapped. 2 minutes until shield failure, J-Hook's voice came again. Commander Choi Min-ji's voice crackled over the communication system. Lieutenant Han, get your group to the ships immediately. That's an order. Woo-jin looked at his group, then at the blocked corridor. His heart beat so fast it hurt. His hand shook as he checked his oxygen supply. He had never been so afraid in his life. Get them to the ship, he told his assistant. Then he turned and ran toward the blocked corridor. Colonel Kang Ta-1 watched from the rescue ship's camera feed as the human lieutenant ran back into danger. Illogical, he said. He cannot save them in time. He will die with them. Medical Officer Yoon Ara kept recording Woo-jin's vital signs. His fear levels are off the charts, she reported. But look at his movement speed. He's running faster than any human should be able to. Woo-jin reached the blocked corridor. The ceiling had fallen in a way that left a small space near the floor. He was the smallest member of the rescue team. He might just fit through. 1 minute until shield failure, J-Hook announced. Woo-jin got down on his stomach and crawled through the gap. Sharp metal cut into his suit, but he kept moving. When he reached the lab, he found the 3 Teguk scientists trying to save their research data. Leave it, he shouted. We have less than a minute. The Teguk looked at him with white-colored eyes of surprise. One of them spoke. You came back for us. The logical choice was to save yourself. 45 seconds until shield failure, J-Hook's voice warned. Woo-jin grabbed the closest scientist and pushed him toward the gap. Logic isn't everything. Move. The Teguk scientists, seeing his urgency, finally left their work and followed him. Woo-jin helped them through the gap one by one. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold them. But he didn't stop. 30 seconds until shield failure. The last scientist made it through. Woo-jin started to follow, but his suit caught on the twisted metal. He was stuck. In the rescue ship, Colonel Ta-1 watched the human lieutenant struggle. For the first time in his life, he made a decision that wasn't based on logic. He ran out of the ship to help. 15 seconds until shield failure. Taiwan reached the corridor and pulled Wu Jin free with his superior Teguk strength. Together, they ran for the ships. 5 seconds. 4. 3. They jumped into the rescue ship just as the shields began to fail. The ships took off immediately, racing away from the doomed station. In the medical bay, Wu Jin sat shaking as Aira treated his cuts. Colonel Taiwan stood watching him, his eyes shifting through many colors. "You were terrified," Taiwan said. "We could measure your fear, yet you came back for my people. Why?" Wu Jin looked up at him. "Because it was right. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and acting anyway." Taiwan was silent for a long moment. Then his eyes settled on a new color, one that none of the humans had seen before. "Today," he said, "the Teguk have learned something important about bravery. And about ourselves." Research Director Park Yun-soo stood before the Teguk High Council 1 week after the Mars rescue mission. The council chamber was filled with senior Teguk officials, their silver skin reflecting the soft light from above. Commander Do-hyun and Captain Lee Ji-won sat in the front row, watching with interest. "Our research has revealed something extraordinary," Yun-soo began, her voice clear and steady. "The human fear response does not just warn us of danger, it prepares our bodies for action." She displayed the medical data that Officer Yoon Aira had collected during the rescue mission. The charts showed how fear had affected the human rescuers. When humans feel fear, their bodies release chemicals that make them stronger and faster, she explained. Their minds become sharper. Their reactions become quicker. Fear does not make humans weak. It makes them stronger. The Teguk Council members' eyes shifted through various colors as they processed this information. One of them spoke up. "But fear makes creatures run from danger. That is its purpose." "That is only part of its purpose," Yun-soo responded. She showed a video of Lieutenant Han Woo-jin running back to save the trapped scientists. Humans can choose what to do with their fear. They can run away, or they can run toward danger to help others. Medical Officer Aira stepped forward next. She presented her readings from the rescue mission. "Look at these numbers," she said. "The humans' fear responses helped them complete the evacuation 17 minutes faster than our most optimistic calculations predicted." Commander Do-hyun stood up. His eyes had settled into a new color, one that showed deep understanding. "When we removed fear from our species, we thought we were becoming stronger," he said. "But perhaps we also removed something valuable." Captain Ji-won joined him. "Fear isn't a weakness," she said to the council. "It's information. It's energy. It's motivation. The brave choice isn't about not feeling fear. It's about what you do when you feel it." The council chamber filled with discussion. The Teguk had always seen their fearlessness as their greatest achievement. Now they had to reconsider everything they thought they knew about bravery and fear. Lieutenant Kim Hae-nyul, who had witnessed the rescue firsthand, shared her observations. "The humans' emotions did not cloud their judgment," she said. "Their emotions gave them strength. They accomplished something our logic said was impossible." Research Director Yun-soo showed more data. She explained how human emotions like fear, love, and compassion work together to help humans make decisions. She demonstrated how these emotions could enhance logical thinking rather than replace it. "Our two species have much to learn from each other," she concluded. The Teguk's logical strength combined with human emotional responses could lead to achievements neither species could reach alone. The High Council listened carefully. They watched the recordings of the rescue mission again. They saw how the humans' fear had driven them to exceed their normal limitations. They observed how their emotional urgency had even helped the Teguk move faster than their usual calculated pace. After hours of discussion, the council reached a decision that would change both species forever. They would not try to restore fear to the Teguk. That was impossible. But they would begin a new program of cooperation with humans, combining the strengths of both species. As the council session ended, Commander Do-hyun turned to Captain Jae-won. "We thought we had perfected ourselves by removing fear," he said. "Now we understand that true perfection comes not from removing weaknesses, but from transforming them into strengths." Jae-won smiled. "That's a very human way of thinking, Commander." "Yes," he replied, his eyes showing that new color of understanding. "Perhaps that is exactly what we needed to learn." 1 year after the Mars rescue mission, Captain Lee Ji-won stood on the bridge of a new type of spaceship. The vessel combined Taeguk technology with human design. Its name was Unity, written in both human and Taeguk languages on its silver hull. Commander Do-hyun stood beside her, his eyes showing that special color that had become common among the Taeguk who worked closely with humans. They called it the understanding shade. "Our first joint deep space mission begins in 1 hour, Jae-won said, checking the ship's systems. "Are you ready, Commander?" "I am," Do-hyun replied. "Though I notice our human crew members show signs of fear about the unknown space ahead of us." Jae-won smiled. "Yes, we do. And that fear will help keep us alert and ready for anything we might find out there." The Unity's crew was evenly split between humans and Taeguk. Lieutenant Han Woo-jin, now recovered from his injuries during the Mars rescue, served as security chief. His actions that day had made him a hero to both species. Research Director Park Yun-soo had set up a special laboratory on the ship. She would continue studying how human emotions and Taeguk logic could work together. Colonel Kang Ta-won had joined her team, bringing his new appreciation for human courage to the research. "All systems ready," Engineer Song Jae-hyuk reported from his station. The ship's engineering section showed how well the two species could work together. Taeguk precision, combined with human creativity, had created systems more advanced than either species could have built alone. Medical Officer Yoon Aira prepared her medical bay with both human and Taeguk equipment. Her studies of fear responses during the Mars rescue had led to new understanding of how emotions affected physical performance. Now she would document how both species adapted to deep space together. Lieutenant Kim Hin-nul worked at the navigation console, her silver fingers moving over controls designed for both species to use. "Course plotted for the Centauri system," she announced. "We will go further than either of our species has gone before." The Unity's mission was to explore deep space, but its crew knew they were also exploring something else. The possibility that two very different species could become stronger together than apart. "Remember when you first arrived at Earth?" Jae-won asked Do-hyun quietly. "You thought we were primitive because we felt fear." Do-hyun's eyes shifted to that understanding shade again. "We thought fearlessness was the highest form of advancement," he said. "We were wrong. True advancement is learning from those who are different from us." The launch countdown began. On the bridge, human heart rates increased, a normal fear response to a new adventure. The Taeguk crew maintained their logical calm. But now both species understood that they needed both responses, the human ability to feel and adapt, and the Taeguk ability to think and analyze. Unity launching in 10 seconds, Jae-won announced to the crew. "Everyone ready?" The responses came back in both human and Taeguk voices. "Ready." As the ship lifted off, carrying its mixed crew into the unknown, Jae-won thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. The Taeguk had learned that there was more to bravery than fearlessness. Humans had learned that their emotions were not weaknesses to overcome, but strengths to embrace. The Unity rose through Earth's atmosphere, its silver hull shining in the sunlight. It carried with it the hopes of two species who had learned that true strength comes not from eliminating differences, but from combining them. The greatest adventure of both species was just beginning.